Welcome to the Word for Life podcast, a daily devotional covering the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation.
In Deuteronomy chapter 10, Moses reminds Israel of how God was gracious to them even after they committed idolatry at Sinai. The Lord graciously listened to Moses' prayer and once again gave the 10 Commandments in stone tablets like he did previously. In verse 4, Moses said to you on the mountain out of the fire on the day of the assembly. Friends, this means the covenant which the Israelites broke at Sinai when they practiced idolatry was restored, and the Lord truly forgave Israel. Blessed the family of Aaron and did not destroy him, but in fact continued Aaron's lineage. In verse 6, we read how after Aaron died, Eleazar his son succeeded him as priest. Not only that, God was gracious to the entire tribe of Levi by setting them apart. In verse 8, Moses reminds Israel, at that time the Lord set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to minister and to pronounce blessings in his name, as they still do today. Not only this, Moses also reminds Israel as to how God graciously allowed them to journey towards Canaan. In verse 11, and lead the people on their way, so that they may enter and possess the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Friends, believers constantly recall God's grace on their lives. Every believer knows the countless times God has forgiven their sins. It is often said, God forgives and forgets. That is not accurate. Yes, God forgives totally, as we have seen here in this chapter. God totally forgave the grievous sin of Israel. Yet, God also reminds Israel so many times of their past sins. Believers also do not forget their past sins, but they often remind themselves of how much they have been forgiven. That reminder is so needed to realize God's grace for them. Because friends, the more they are drawn to love the Lord. Moses also reminds Israel of their past sins and God's forgiveness, and through that, he motivates Israel to follow the Lord. Notice how, after reminding Israel of what they did in Sinai, in verse 12, Moses begins with verse 12, and now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. You see, first, believers receive God's grace and forgiveness, and then they respond to God's mercy and grace by living the life he wants them to live. From verse 15 to 16, we see 15 reads, Yet the Lord set his affection on your ancestors and loved them, and he chose you, their descendants, above all the nations as it is today. And then in verse 16, the next verse, Moses says, Circumcise your hearts therefore, and do not be stiff-necked any longer. You see, first he reminds them of God's love and grace, and then motivates them to circumcise their hearts. Friends, for those who do not remember the grace of God, the commandments of the Lord will feel forced and a burden. But for those who always remember God's grace and are thankful for it, God's expectations, why Moses finally in this chapter calls Israel to praise the Lord by remembering his grace. Verse 21 and 22 reads, He is the one you praise. He is your God who performed for you those great and awesome wonders you saw with your own eyes. Your ancestors who went down into Egypt were 70, as numerous as the stars in the sky. Friends, Every believer has something to thank the Lord for, because every believer has transgressed, fallen into sin, displeased the Lord, and strayed away sometime or other. Yet the Lord has been merciful. When we asked God for forgiveness, He has been gracious. That grace we received motivates us to fear, obey, love, and serve our God.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow for the next episode of the Word for Life podcast.